We have with us this morning Marvin Arrington. He's been on the commission since 2015. He's vice chair of the commission, and a lot of things related to that, national offices, national organizations that he keeps up with. He's a proud graduate of Douglas High School. He also went to University of Virginia for a regular degree, and then has his law degree from Emory. He's a private practitioner. So, Marvin, anything else the voters should know about you when they're going to the polls?
Well, thank you, Paul. I am very happy, and it's been the pleasure of my life to serve the residents of Fulton County over the last 12 years. I've been dedicated and committed to serving the residents of Fulton County. And I am also a certified county commissioner, which means I've received over 150 hours of continuing education as a commissioner from the University of Georgia and the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. I started the Veterans Empowerment Task Force and secured $1 million a year for veterans and veteran services in Fulton County. I brought pre-arrest diversion to Atlanta and Fulton County, along with Councilman Kwanzaa Hall back in 2016. I'm very proud to say that we have diverted, in 10 years, we've diverted over 1,000 people from being arrested and out of our jail, which is very important because our jail is overcrowded. And so I'm very excited about the things and the work that I have done over the last 12 years.
So the question, I guess, is you're on the commission now. Why do you want to be chair instead of just a commissioner?
Well, the composition of the commission has changed. And right now, it's very frustrating, but we're going in the wrong direction. For the last 2 years, they cut the $1 million for veterans. They cut $500,000 per year for the Summer Youth Jobs Program. Both of those programs are programs that I started and that we were supporting. The Summer Youth Job Program we've supported since 2015. The Veterans Program, Veterans Task Force, we did $1 million a year for 3 years, and last year they cut that money. And so I believe that we are moving in the wrong direction. You know, while these cuts were made, we had $75 million budget surplus. On average, every year for the last 12 years, there's been a $75 million budget surplus. And so what that means to me is there's no reason that we could not allocate $1 million for veterans and veteran services. We're not prioritizing our veterans. We're not prioritizing our youth because we're cutting the Summer Youth Jobs Program. A lot of youth need a job to make money, to stay out of trouble, to stay busy. When I see us voting to cut those programs, or specifically programs that I started and I brought to the county, that is when I decided a year ago when they cut $2 million for the arts, $1 million for seniors, $1 million for veterans, and $500,000 for veterans for the Summer Youth Jobs Program. And I knew then that I was going to run to be chair to break up what I call the Gang of Four. Which is, Commissioner Pitts, Commissioner Abdul Rahman, Commissioner Thorne, and Commissioner Ellis.
It's probably appropriate at this point to talk about the philosophical issue, or not necessarily philosophical issue, but your approach to taxes and spending. So what would be your approach to where the revenue comes from? How do we get enough revenue for the county?
Well, one of the first things, Paul, I think we need to do is that we need to align our tax year with our fiscal year. So we borrow money, tax anticipation notes. We borrow money for 9 or 10 months in order to operate the county. If our tax year and our fiscal year were aligned, we could save the money that we're spending on those tax anticipation notes annually. So that's the first thing that I would do. The second thing is that we need to make sure that everyone's is being taxed fairly and that their properties are being assessed fairly, and that's commercial and residential properties. From my vantage point, we want everyone to pay their fair share and no more. Right now, our budget is $1 billion a year. and 80% of that money comes from property taxes. So we are very reliant on property taxes, and we need to do more, ideally, to diversify our streams of revenue. I think everyone believes that we need a new jail. The real question is, how do we finance that new jail? Before COVID, the new jail was anticipated to cost $500 million to $800 million. Of course, like everything else, after COVID, that number doubled. And so now the cost of a new jail is $1.6 billion. The current plan that was adopted by the Gang of Four calls for the building of a new mental health facility for 500 inmates and the refurbishing of the existing Rice Street jail. Well, that's going to cost $1.3 billion. So for me, I would rather spend $1.6 billion and have a brand new facility that I know is constitutionally safe and humane, instead of spending $1.3 billion on a building that is, from my vantage point, disintegrating. I mean, we have inmates climbing through brick walls to assault other inmates. The Rice Street Jail is way past its useful life. It opened in 1989, the year I graduated from high school. It has served us well, but it is, it's time for a new jail. And a new jail would allow for less staff to supervise more people. They're building jails differently now. We tried to finance the new jail with a 1 cent sales tax. We went to the state and said, hey, can we get 1 cent for sales tax in order to finance this jail? And there was pushback from the state in that regard. And so then that doesn't leave us a lot of options other than, looking at perhaps a millage rate increase in order to finance the jail.
Let's go back to the commercial assessment issue. That's an issue that
Yes.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about. My house is evaluated based on the sales that happen in the neighborhood. So if the sales go up 10%, then my value goes up 10%. That doesn't happen with commercial property. And my concern was that I don't understand why the county wouldn't use sales data when you have big commercial buildings selling, why they wouldn't use that data to set the value of large commercial properties in the town. And I know this is complicated, but would you be pushing for some change on that issue?
Again, I think everyone should be treated fairly and equally. And so if we're using one metric to measure assessments for personal properties, I would not understand why we would use a different metric for commercial properties. In my mind, the metric should be the same for commercial and residential properties. But I believe that there should be equity, and that commercial properties and residential properties should be assessed using the same metrics, whatever those metrics are. That's the only way you get equity.
Some people define progressive philosophy of government, and this is a little philosophical question about how you would define your political position. Where do you stand on that continuum of positions?
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of titles. I just believe right is right and wrong is wrong. And so, one of the problems that I have, I'm a Democrat, and one of the problems I have is that I believe the Democrats have allowed the Republicans to own the term conservative. And I believe you can be a Democrat and be conservative. But for me, the biggest problem is the far left and the far right. All of the answers are in the middle. I think the far left pushes too far to the left, the far right pushes too far to the right. I like to stay in the middle in a sweet spot and make sure that we are taking care. I believe government is here to provide for those, for everyone. And the only way to provide for everyone, I think, is to be closer to the middle in order to help as many people as possible on the left and on the right. And so I don't really like the titles progressive or liberal and conservative because I think it depends on the issue by issue what you are. And so I don't necessarily like those labels. I understand that they exist, but I try to push back and just be an independent thinker.
Well, I know what I used to describe mine as being pragmatic. Let's look at what
Yes.
works. You sound like that.
I try to be, and I've got a legal background, so everything that I do, I believe, is based on the rule of law and what I believe is fair and just under our Constitution.
Well, let's talk about a couple of issues. How do you deal with the mayor's proposal that he wants to extend the TADs for another 30 years, putting the revenue or the increased revenue from those districts into development?
Well, I think that the TADs are good instruments for development. If we take a step back from it, I think, Atlanta is the economic engine of the state, and frankly, of the Southeast. And so I think we need to do what we can in order to help make sure Atlanta succeeds. I think there are areas that have been underdeveloped, and, the TADs allow for the development of those areas. But if you have a property that's been underperforming for 40 years and hasn't been bringing in any tax money, that property hasn't been bringing in any money in taxes, and someone's proposing building a $500 million or $2 billion development on that property, waiving taxes for 10 years at zero, and in order to allow them to do the development that'll bring in a lot of more taxes later, I think makes sense. But we have to do everything smart. The hardest part of this job is balancing interest of the developers versus balancing the interest of the residents. To some extent, Fulton County probably could use that tax money for a lot of the other things that we need to provide. But at the same time, we have to balance, the interest in that amount of money that we could be getting from the taxes against more development in the city of Atlanta. And I helped create one of the TADs in College Park so that they could do more development around the area, in an area, again, where there was no development for 40 years. And so we have to be smart about it. It's a balancing test. And sometimes you balance more towards development, and sometimes you balance more towards residents.
One of the issues we haven't gotten to is the healthcare question. I think one of the major issues in front of the county is whether there's going to be good healthcare in the southern portion of the county. Where do you stand on the hospital that's been suggested, or the need to expand public health?
So after the closure of the two Wellstar hospitals, I declared a healthcare state of emergency in Fulton County and got the board to adopt that. I believe that we do need better healthcare equity throughout Fulton County. Healthcare, in my mind, is not a privilege. It's a basic human right. Above I-20, there are at least 5 hospitals. Below, including Grady, below I-20, there are 0 hospitals. And so that is what I call a healthcare desert and a healthcare gap. Not only are there 0 hospitals, but there's also a slow ambulance response time. And so based upon the lack of hospitals and the slow ambulance response time, people living below I-20 live on average 5 to 7 years less than those living above I-20. And so excited that we helped Grady start with the freestanding emergency room. And then we also just indicated that we are willing to help them turn that into a full hospital. They've now asked for $300 million over 30 years, and they're anticipating phase 1 is this freestanding emergency room. Phase 2 are doctors' offices and buildings. And then phase 3 would be the building of a full-fledged hospital right there on that campus. But to me, that's not enough. And, one hospital below I-20 versus 5 above I-20 is better than 0. But that's just the beginning for me. I don't want to stop until we have the same 5 below I-20 that they have above I-20.
So Marvin, we're kind of at the end of our time. What's your kind of summary pitch for why voters should put you in as chair?
I believe I'm the most qualified. I'm an attorney. I am a certified county commissioner. I believe in leading by example, and I have led by example by getting money for our veterans, prioritizing our youth, prioritizing smart governance. And so, again, I believe I'm the best person for the job. But the best indicator of what someone is going to do is what they have done in the past. And I have led by example for the last 12 years, leading on pre-arrest diversion, leading on keeping 1,000 people out of the jail, leading on veterans, leading on youth, leading on the arts. I'm known as the arts commissioner, right? I'm a criminal defense and entertainment attorney. And so I believe the arts is a universal language, and one of the ways that we can transcend race and sex and all of those things. And so I believe, again, that I'm the most qualified person for the job. And, you know, if you're looking for a show horse, I may not be the person. If you're looking for a workhorse, vote for Marvin Arrington, Fulton County Chairman of the Board of Commissioners.
There we have it, folks. Marvin Arrington running for chair of the county commission. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for speaking directly to the voters.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me and this opportunity.